most of Lucas County. And so the district, upon the state legislature's desire a few years ago after the census was done, they kind of pretzeled Ohio. And they moved this district, which has been traditionally a Western Ohio district, center. A little east and a little west. And so I say they've given us the crown jewels of Ohio. And it is really beautiful. I was very close friends with Congressman Don Keith and his wife Gina. I don't know if Gina's here tonight or not. When I was a new member of Congress, he really helped me understand the ropes. And every time I come here back to this very building, I have this immediate recall of the Peace family. So I wanted to just say a word that long before I got to Congress, I was a city and regional planner for a number of years and spent a lot of my life trying to figure out how to move capital into areas for revitalization. This is an incredible achievement competing against all of our states and many, many more applications than there are federal funds. And so this is a real feather in your cap, and also your recent recognition is one of only 12 communities that the National Trust for Historic Preservation has recognized across our country as a community of distinctive destinations. And as I say that, I just want to veer a moment to say that as we look at this part of Ohio, which has been so hard hit by job loss, what you are doing here through O.H.I.O to create a new vision for this region of Ohio and using all the assets that you have to bring people here, and with that, what I call heritage tourism, to begin to put the pieces back together of a future economy that is more robust, is extraordinarily important in this community, our global achievements. And so to help the world understand what is occurring here today and what has occurred in the past is really, I think, a new horizon for you, and you know that. Maybe very quickly, let me just say that we are working closely with Coastal Ohio, which this Ohio organization is already connected to develop a seamless impression from the outside of who we are as a region of the world. Thank you so very much. Items from O.H.I.O. Thank you.
The third page of your program is a very nice, brief biographies of our two speakers, Dan Goulding and Elizabeth Goulding, and I urge you to read them, but not during their program. Interviews have in the past about 5 years been corrected, most of them have been corrected, and new transcriptions made of them, and we are still continuing to interview people. We are always happy to get suggestions from who should be interviewed for our program, for the posterity, and all these interviews, when they have been corrected and transcribed, are available at O.H.I.O. So, with that
short introduction, we really appreciate that. What? Well, Liz and I are really delighted to be a part of this festive occasion. Can you hear me now? Is everything okay? What? It's going off again? No, it's okay. It's okay. Well, I say we are delighted to be here for this festive occasion. In fact, I'm getting the age now where I'm delighted to be anywhere. The first thing I wanted to do is to thank Barbara Pryor, who's head of the art library, for the loan of the life-size likeness of Clarence Ward. And as you know, Clarence Ward really founded the modern art department and the art library, is very active in the town. And that life-size poster was done about 4 years ago, and it was the beginning of an annual special program at the Oberlin Art Library to celebrate his birthday. And in between times, they just put him in a closet. So I think you can say that we're taking Clarence out of the closet for this occasion. I also want to give a really big thanks to Marly Marell, who loaded us down with an incredible amount of material, very interesting material, from this oral history project. And it was our task, as you know, to go through that and in a very brief program, see if we could give you some flavor of that under the general topic, Fun in Oberlin, Past and Present. And I must say that Elizabeth and I both found it a very daunting task to select and organize this material into a short program. And for clarity of presentation, we've selected and grouped the excerpts under the following topics. Fun for all seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, holiday festivities, special events and community celebrations, personal pleasures, those that can be discussed in public, and 2 final stories that don't quite fit into our other topical categories. And we will begin, appropriately enough, with fun in the springtime.
According to the late Carl Kenny, the old streetcar line that used to run through Oberlin was a vital source of springtime fun. A big attraction back in those days in the spring and fall was to take the streetcar to Birmingham, Ohio, where a trestle crossed the Vermilion River. A lot of town kids would go fishing in the Vermilion River because in those days the river was teeming with fish. The streetcar would let you off on either side of the trestle. If you got off on the east side, the conductor would be able to spot where the fish were and would point them out to the kids and as they scurried down the riverbank. It was not exactly a sporting arrangement and awfully hard on the fish, who didn't last too long.
Billy, our thrill, remembers dusting off the old horse and buggy at the first signs of spring and into summer. We always used a horse and buggy. I can remember thinking how much fun it was to ride through the dusty road because the dust was so velvety and soft. And it was fun to go barefoot in it. One of the places we lived was right across the street from the woods. It was full of mayflowers and adder tongues and violets in the spring. I loved to go over there and pick them. I just adored dandelions. And I would pick my apron full and take them upstairs and put them in my toy box. Then I would cry when Mama later cleaned them out and tossed them away.
And in Oberlin, the sweet days of springtime moved by degrees into lazy, hot, and humid days of summer.
The late Foster Bowes remembers how black churches in Oberlin sponsored summer fun. We had Sunday school picnics. That was generally for all the black churches. We'd say the middle of July is the picnic, and it was usually held at Luna Park on the lake. Then every church would have a bus or would use the streetcar service. Some people went by horse and buggy. There would be as many as 400 or 500 people at that place on one day. We had swimming in the lake, decorations, and baseball games. We also had foot races, one that was called the Married Women's Race. Boy, my mother used to enjoy running in that race. You know, it was a great event for young married women of the time. Older children had their baseball game. The merry-go-round was open to smaller children. There was a Ferris wheel as well as roller skating ring. We just had a great time that one day. Of course, you could go to Luna Park most any time. It was open to the public if you had the money.
And then, of course, in the summertime, there were sodas and ice cream. The late Glenn Hobbs recalls that for his first date with his future wife, Lillian, we went to Gibson's restaurant, where the bakery is now. They had a nice soda fountain and sold hamburgers and other snacks. They had wire chairs and ceiling fans. I forgot what we had that day, but I do recall, and Lillian told me shortly after our date, that Mrs. Gibson had called Lillian's mother and assured her that we were there and apparently having a good time.
Apparently, the late Mary Bradley Kelly's behavior was not as closely monitored as Lillian. She recounts some of her more daring adventures this summer. I remember the Manor, which was a college dorm and was sort of like a club. They thought of themselves as a club and were very daring. They'd have picnics in the Arboretum, and I guess it was during Prohibition then, but they would have drinks, a whole bit. I was about 14 then, and I remember going along with them. And there was swimming. We did swim in the quarries over in Amherst, and it was supposed to be very dangerous. But I don't think my family knew about all those dangerous things that I did. So my question is, where was Mrs. Gibson when we really needed her?
And alas, Oberlin summer airs gave way to the bracing chill of autumn.
The late Mildred Haynes recalls that Oberlin College opened about the middle of September, not as early as now, and most of the students arrived by train at New York Center. It was really quite an event to see all those young people disembarking from those trains. And for the girls, it was interesting to see how the young ladies were dressed. For in those days, everybody had a new suit for the fall time, and it was just like a fashion parade for us to see those students. It's the same way today. Everybody turns out at Oberlin to get the latest fashion trends for our students.
And for some, fall means football. Foster Rose recalls that for fun, we played street football. Take a burlap bag, wrap it up, and make a football out of it. We had this depot lot up by the train station where the neighborhood kids played baseball in the summer. On Thanksgiving Day, we would have a big football game. The north end of town kids would play against the south end kids. We always looked forward to that big Thanksgiving game. We also went to football games on Saturday afternoons to root for the college team. I can remember years ago when Oberlin College defeated O.H.I.O State.
Just like today. and then came winter.
Of course, fun-loving Oberlinians remain undaunted by the cold blasts of winter. In fact, one of the oldest and most enduring winter pastimes in Oberlin, dating back to Oberlin's founding and early development in the 19th century, is ice skating. The late Bob Thomas sets the stage for ice skating's later popularity. In the winter, of course, the ice rink was up here between East Lorraine and Park and Pleasant Street. It was owned by a Negro man named Gator, and that was where we hung out in the wintertime. On Saturdays, they would have a band. They had a shack with a second floor with the windows removed. I guess there were 5 or 6 pieces in a band that would play on Saturday afternoon when the rink was full. But we frequently didn't have money to pay to go in, so we had to crawl through the fence. We'd go back of Tank Hall. There was a fence back there, and we would crawl under it. Well, we couldn't go in to get warm because they would know we hadn't paid. And so we just had to skate until we froze to death.
Foster Bose also remembers the old skating rink run by Walt Gate. There used to be a couple. I remember very well. When they got on the rink, most people would just stop and watch them skate. She was athletic director for women at Oberlin College named Mrs. Hatch. Everybody used to just love to watch her and her husband skate on the rink.
Marion Bradley Kelly remembers that everybody seemed to skate in Oberlin. And it was even going on in the wartime because I skated at Gators in 1940. And in the winter, we used to also sled down the Arboretum Hill and the Waterworks Hill. I also had my first skis, an old-fashioned pair, given to me in 1920.
The late Marville Fields provides other interesting glimpses into wintertime fun in Oberlin. She recalls that In the winter, instead of having wagons on wheels, the men had bobsleds. There were also cutters, small, just for 2 people. There was a young man in town, Ernest Jenkins, who had a beautiful horse and a cutter. I got to ride with him on Sunday. I tell you, I was just on top of the world. It was a delightful experience. And the seasonal rhythms of Oberlin sometimes reach their crescendo during special national holiday festivities.
There are, of course, Christmas and New Year, holidays not celebrated during the first few decades of Oberlin's existence because they were considered highly suspect, too secular, materialistic, and downright heathenish. It wasn't until the Oberlin of the 1870s that Christmas and New Year's began to take on more festive and sumptuous guises.
Much to the pleasure of the Oberlin merchants at that time. Jack Cochran provides recent brief testimony to the more heathenish impulses of the Christmas season. One year I got to be Santa Claus. I didn't want to do it until my dad explained to me that the college girls love to sit on Santa's lap. I was at the time, I think, 26, and upon further consideration, I concluded that playing Santa Claus might not be such a bad idea after all. And it seems to me that might have been the beginning of lap dancing.
The late Bill Long describes the thrill that he experienced in sharing his lifelong love affair with model trains to new generations of children.
Every year we laid out this big display of electric trains at the co-op bookstore. We invited groups of children from daycare, Head Start, first, second, third grade. We usually had something like 650 or more kids up there in groups, and we always gave them a little something. Sometimes Santa paid a bit. Well, I played Santa for the most part, but sometimes Sid Cummings took over the role. It's a big thing. The children are brought over by the busloads from Elyria. All the Head Start children from Elyria come over. That's a live bunch. A couple of very lively teachers, too. They haul them over there, 30, 35 to a bus and up the stairs. Karen's the talker because someone has to operate the trains and talk at the same time, which evidently Karen can do. So she talks them up for about 10 minutes or so, runs the train, and then Santa will appear and jive them up and pass out some goodies. We don't sell anything. It's just a happy time.
The late Frank Savosky recalls that after Christmas, the volunteer firemen of the community had a special night that was advertised where they would go around to pick up all the discarded Christmas trees. They would take them to the campus where they would have a huge fire with the fire department around so nobody would get hurt. When the fire was dying down, the firemen would pass out Eskimo pies to the kids, and everybody would sing songs.
One of the oldest community-planned holiday festivities in Oberlin is, of course, associated with the observance of Independence Day, 4th of July, fireworks and all. Marvell Fields remembers that in addition to the public display of fireworks, her family and others set off their own firecrackers. Children were allowed to have toy pistols and firecrackers and sparklers. The adults had the night fireworks. My dad always got a lot of fireworks for us to see at night. Roman candles, I guess they were the most important. And then he had pinwheels which he put on the tree and lighted, and skyrockets. I guess they were about the biggest.
In addition to national holidays, Oberlin's history is replete with special events and community celebrations.
Carl Kenny remembers that the main thing that stood out in my teen years was a big commencement parade at the college. Every commencement, they would hold a huge parade, many elaborate floats. They would string over 10,000 lanterns on the campus. The parades were huge. People came from all over, not only in London, but people from Cleveland, the whole of northern Ohio, would come to see the campus lighted up. Carl also remembers vividly the visit to Oberlin by Chautauqua speakers and entertainers. For a good many years, the Chautauqua visited Oberlin for a week and put on entertainment. The show was on a big tent on campus. I remember magicians. And one time, Al Jolson sang. There were afternoon and evening programs, and it was enjoyed by very large numbers of people.
Pat Stetson remembers that when she was about 10 years old in 1938, don't try to figure out her age, she liked to ride in a float in an Oberlin parade. It was like the Rose Bowl parade, she said. They put chicken wire over the cars and decorated with all kinds of flowers. I was given candy to throw to the onlookers as the parade went down Main Street. George Rapley, however, saved all his candy. He was 4 years old. And I threw all of mine away. Afterwards, he said, ha, 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 ha.
Never in Oberlin's history, however, has there been anything to equal the one-time old, utterly original, and unique Sewer Fest of 1989. Let's hear Mary Ann Cochran, via the voice of Elizabeth Goulding, tell us about it in her own words.
In the summer of 1989, most of the sewers in the downtown area were being dug up and replaced all at one time. So it became very difficult for anyone to make their way through town. Some of us were sitting around probably on a Saturday night, probably had a couple of beers, and I laughingly said, well, why don't we just have a sewer fest? Jan Pierce was with us, and she said, I think that's a great idea. So we thought, why not? Everybody's frustrated. We needed to have a little comic relief. So we put together a parade with a lot of good publicity in a few of the local area papers and Jan's national press list. We got a lot of coverage nationally and even internationally. We developed interest in town and set up the parade. We asked the construction workers if they would join us, and they did. We had people that simply showed up with anything that had anything to do with sewers or plumbing. It didn't matter what it was. I'll never forget how Glenn Hobbs constructed an outhouse, which was put on a float. He had a door that his grandson would open periodically, and his trousers would be down around his knees. He'd stick his head out and just laugh. A lot of people came with plungers on their heads. The construction workers had their trucks cleaned up to a shiny luster and threw toilet paper out the windows, cheering bystanders. Now, the event caught the attention of the national and international press. An Akron news station videotaped the event, and we were able to get hold of copies. It was just one of those quirky things that just paid off.
Well, moving from sewer grind to the sublime, we now provide a few brief glimpses of some of Oberlinians' private pleasures. Those, at least, that again, we can mention in public.
The late Maynard Scott joyously exclaimed, there was square dancing. Oh, that square dancing. After an evening of square dancing in Penfield, at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they'd just plop me on a chair or a bench somewhere, and I'd go to sleep.
Carl Kenny, on the other hand, was introduced to the pleasures of other forms of dance. One thing we used to do that was a lot of fun was to join in on the dancing classes, which were held by the college in the basement rec hall, which is now Rice Hall. They were taught by Mel Hatch, a woman hired by the college to teach dancing to the college students. She was in charge of the women's gymnasium for years and years. We used to go, and at first we would just look through the basement windows and watch the college students dance. Finally, she wangled a bunch of us to come in and take part in the dance. It was really a lot of fun as I look back on it, because it was the only chance for high school kids to get any instruction in dancing. It was every night. We didn't go every night necessarily, but it was always there if we wanted to. The college was very good about letting high school kids participate in things like that.
Another source of great personal pleasure was found in reading books from childhood to adulthood. Maynard Gotch confesses that when I was a little kid, I used to read books when I should have been out in the field helping my father. You can believe that. I couldn't get enough to read. I read The Rover Boys until I could recite it almost from memory. And there were the westerns of Zane Grey, Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I kept special books I really liked in the parlor. It was a special room, a nice room. And we had a little bookcase in there, and I had a special shelf in the bookcase for my own books.
Growing up, the late Madeline Cox loved to work outdoors on the farm and to read aloud from favorite books in the evening. I love the farm. I love to work outdoors with my father. In fact, my mother used to say that she didn't have any daughters, only boys. I worked in the hay fields in the summer and went out with him in the winter to shovel snow and help feed the cows. I loved to be out in the cow barn at night when my father would go out for the last feeding. The cow's breath smelled so sweet, and the smell of the hay was so nice. It was snug and warm. It just felt so secure. A wonderful, good feeling. Our pleasures were very simple. We were a reading family. My mother always read aloud to us on Sunday and at night. When I reached a certain age, I learned to read aloud. I got so I could read aloud the whole day, and my voice didn't even get hoarse. I loved to read.
Len Hobbs remembers all those imaginary journeys he made in an old Model T touring car with side curtains and a handbrake. My sister and I were allowed to sit and play in the car as long as we didn't turn the steering wheel and, of course, didn't blow the horn. But she and I would take the most wonderful trips in that car without ever leaving the barn.
So we're going to conclude now with two oral recollections that do not fit neatly under any of our other topical categories.
The late Frank Tresh provides unique perspectives on the role that Oberlin's railroad tracks played for him while he was growing up. We liked to walk the railroad tracks because at that time the trains carried lump coal. They loaded the cars to the hill, right up to the top, so that when the cars were rocking back and forth, lumps of coal would fall off and we would go along picking them up, putting them in bags and taking them to the next crossroads so that Dad could come around in the car later in the day and pick up those bags of coal. That was our fuel for the winter. Also along the railroad track were wild strawberries and elderberries, as well as wild garlic. And there was at least one hen that used to lay her eggs beside the tracks. So the railroad track became for us the site of our playground, our heat, and our livelihood.
Many of you may not know that at one time during the Second World War, hard liquor flowed freely in downtown Oberlin. One of the shocking revelations of this oral history as told by our local merchants. It seems that during the Second World War, hard liquor was often in short supply. However, the late Ken Powers, part owner of the old Powers and Dolly's men's clothing store on West College Street, had a contact at Hart, Schaffner & Marks who knew somebody who was in contact with somebody in Chicago who could lay his hands on a steady supply of what Presti called superb booze. Ken Powers exploited his contact at Hart Schaffner to send a plentiful supply of assorted hard liquor shipped in cartons marked for men's clothing. When a shipment arrived, the word was discreetly passed to downtown merchants and other pillars of the community. In due course, city leaders would saunter into Powers and Dolly's in ones and twos, make their way to the basement, and sample some of the Hart, Schaffner & Marks liquid apparel. They would then purchase a few bottles, pay Ken Powers, and surreptitiously and happily leave by the back exit. As one merchant summarized the operation, it was our our way of providing a full-service community.
One in Oberlin Past and Present has been a teaser to acquaint you with some of the oral histories which O.H.I.O members have been gathering since the early 1980s, to acquaint historians, our grandchildren, and theirs with Oberlin in the last 7 to 8 decades. The lives of these earlier Oberlinians were quite different, harder and simpler in many respects, but they still found time for pleasure, wholesome activity, the joys of nature, and fun with friends and family. We regret very much that time restrictions prevented us from presenting a lot of very good material, but we're sure you would have loved it. You can visit the Oberlin Heritage Center, Monroe House, and request to read these oral histories right on site. And I guarantee you that you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for being a great audience.
I'd like to recognize some more of our special guests. You've probably noticed that some people have on badges that say 5 years and 10 years. People with 10 stickers have been members of our organization for 10 or more years, while those with 5 stickers have been members for anywhere from 5 to 9 years. Members are the backbone of our organization, and it's my pleasure to especially thank the members of our membership committee, headed by Ruth Schwagerly, and assisted by staff member Mary Ann Cunningham, and for her service on the improvement and nominating committees, and as O.H.I.O's representative to Pride Day and to the Main Street Design Committee. We are very pleased to appoint her to the position of honorary trustee. To the board, members, staff, and volunteers of the Oberlin Historical and Improvement Organization and the Oberlin Heritage Center gratefully acknowledge the outstanding leadership and community service of Ruth Schwagerly. As docent from 1995 to the present, chairperson of the Membership and Docents Committee, and as trustee from 2000 to 2004, we are very pleased to appoint her to the position of honorary trustee. Members, staff, and volunteers of the Oberlin Historical and Improvement Organization and the Oberlin Heritage Center gratefully acknowledge the outstanding leadership and community service of James Underwood. As trustee from 1996 to 2004, as Vice President from 1997 to 1999, and as Chairperson of the Collections Advisory Committee, we are very pleased to appoint him to the position of honorary trustee. The Oberlin Heritage Center O.H.I.O, a community awards program, annually celebrates and recognizes individuals, organizations, and businesses whose outstanding accomplishments are in keeping with our mission. And I know most of you know this by heart, but just in case. Our mission is to preserve and share Oberlin's unique heritage and to make our community a better place to live, learn, work, and visit. This is the 3rd year of our awards program. Robert Olfant and Alfred Coolidge to come forward, please. Included on the site are class lists, obituaries, history of the school buildings, a tool for finding missing persons, for reunions, planners and genealogists, and many other resources. It serves as a model for other communities to aspire to in terms of harnessing the power of the Internet to to build community, and to preserve and share local history. For their significant accomplishments and their lasting gifts to everyone interested in the town of Oberlin's history, we are proud to present them with the Community Historian of the Year Award. Thank you. Richard Holdsworth. Richard Holdsworth, Oberlin Heritage Center, O.H.I.O. Volunteer of the Year. Steady, always reliable, always cheerful, and seemingly always available to help O.H.I.O. Dick is the quintessential volunteer, on call and often on site, day and night. The Center, O.H.I.O. Volunteer of the Year Award.
I'll take credit for most of all of this, but the blame is over here. As Terry said last year, a volunteer in 1960, a volunteer in a room full of volunteers, and we blame it all on her. But I'd like to share just a short story with you about why and how we are all volunteers. Last summer, I walked up to the office, knocked down and said, "What's new? What's going on?" Well, she shuffled a few papers. "Well, everything's okay. How'd you like to play tennis with Evan?" "Well, I love to play tennis and I love Evan." So I said, "Sure, I'd like that." Pause. I said, "When's he coming up?" Well, there was a real pause. Papers were shuffled. "Oh, well, you're going down there, since you want to play with him, and you're going to South Carolina the weekend after next to play tennis with Evan and scan this whole room full of pictures that he has for the book." I think it may have been a little collusion between the two Pats, because Pat H. wasn't surprised. But anyway, I said that I would go, so I had to go. And, she always says, you can say no, but she doesn't mean it. So we trucked all the way down to South Carolina and had a very nice short week, but scanned over 100 pictures or so. And I did play tennis for 1 hour. But not with Evan. Evan prepared his court, and he had hustled in a tennis pro and his wife to play tennis with me. So, but we had 1 hour of good tennis, and made it back. Now you know why you're all volunteers. It's this one. Thank you very much.
And it's my pleasure to present the Keep Oberlin Beautiful Award to Dennis Brody. Dennis Brody keeps Oberlin College and town beautiful, lush through his job as Oberlin College grounds manager and through his volunteer contributions in assisting the Oberlin Main Street Design Committee by planting and caring for flower planters throughout downtown.
Many of you are probably familiar with the writings of one of the great philosophers of the period of the 1980s and 1990s. I'm sure Dan Marell would be aware of this. A gentleman by the name of Woody Allen. Woody gave a commencement address at Princeton University. And the comments he made have become almost written in stone and are long remembered. Many of you may be very familiar with them already. In that commencement address, Woody Allen said that more than any other time in history, mankind faces a crossroad. One path leads to despair and utter hopelessness. The other to total extinction. Let us pray we have the wisdom to choose correctly. He made another comment which was not quite so familiar, in which he said, I speak, by the way, not with any sense of futility, but with a panicky conviction of the absolute meaninglessness of existence, which could be easily interpreted as pessimism. It is not. It is merely a healthy concern for the predicament of modern man. Now, I quote that, not that I feel that O.H.I.O. is facing such a crossroads, but we do have some very, very important decisions to make, which will go a long way toward determining the future of O.H.I.O. I think you have all read about the National Endowment for Humanities Challenge Grant that has been presented to O.H.I.O. The grant is to help create an endowment fund which will help to support a new position for the organization of a museum education coordinator. The grant requires that we provide a dollar-for-dollar match, which has to be raised by July of 2006. In making the grant to O.H.I.O., Bruce Cole, who is the chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities, wrote to the organization stating that the peer evaluators who reviewed the O.H.I.O. proposal were especially impressed with Oberlin's powerful history and with O.H.I.O.'s understanding of the significant story that it has to tell. They also admired past programs and current activities, as well as the careful planning process that underlies O.H.I.O.'s decision to hire a museum education coordinator who will enhance humanities programming for scholars, area teachers, and the general public. We must raise that money, but we have made the decision that our campaign goal to fund a museum education coordinator is not simply going to match what NEH has provided, but that we are going to aim for full funding of such a person. So it will go beyond the $100,000 which we must raise.
Dinner is not a new tradition. 90 years ago, one of our predecessor organizations, the Federation for Village Improvement and Social Betterment, and the Oberlin Board of Commerce, held their annual meeting at the James Brand House. And veal with biscuit and gravy, mashed potatoes, peas, jelly rolls, cream cheese salad, vegetable salad, ice cream, cake, and coffee. And guess what? That was for lunch. Shall we see if we can have that again next year? Sure. Somehow I think our 2004 meeting was perhaps more fun than the one in 1914.
like to recognize a very special staff member and salute her for 10 years of exceptional service to our organization. She didn't know about this time because I knew she wouldn't come. So Mary Ann, will you please move forward? She's the glue that holds us all together, and she has the most amazing, upbeat, pleasant personality, even when the walls are falling down all around us. She's contributed greatly to all aspects of our operation, but especially membership and the annual fund, our docent program, our tour program, events planning, and public relations. And a tribute to her. Please join me in thanking Mary Ann. On that day, we learned that Oberlin was one of 12 communities throughout the United States to be named one of the National Trust's distinctive destinations for 2004. We're very proud to have nominated our community for this important recognition, and I hope you had a chance to admire the plaque which we received, which was on display in the lobby. I will read to you the text on the plaque. It says that the National Trust for Historic Preservation recognizes Oberlin, Ohio as one of America's dozen distinctive destinations, March 3rd, 2004. Oberlin is a richly unique and authentic historic community that has reinvented itself through preservation-based revitalization and well-managed growth. Oberlin is a model for other communities across the nation. Signed, Richard Moe, President, National Trust for Historic Preservation. On that note, please join me with my empty glass in making a toast. Here is to Oberlin. Here's to O.H.I.O, past, present, and future. I wonder what the Oberlin colonists of the 1830s thought of when they envisioned the Oberlin of the future. At that time, plain living and highest thinking reigned supreme, and their feasts might well have involved a Graham diet and certainly no toast and not even coffee or tea. Thank you to all of you. Before you leave, please fill out your evaluation form. We do appreciate your comments, players. And please stretch a little, look over on the edge of your chair, and if there's a round sticker dot on your chair, you are a winner of the plant on your table. Congratulations.